Okay, this is Globalization Part 2 Review, page 4. Alright, so under Johnson, I have all the Vietnam stuff, but again, it didn't all happen just under Johnson. You might want to write down Johnson was president from 1963 through 1968, officially 69, because he was president into the beginning of 1969, before the Nixon was sworn in. So although I group all the Vietnam War, the rest of the stuff here together, a lot of it together, just realize he's not president this whole time. So key events in the Vietnam War first. Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. What is that and why is it important?
Blank check to the president to do whatever he thought necessary.
Very good. Yes, it's what turns this into a war for us. Congress turns over their power to wage war to the president. It gives him a blank check to do whatever he feels is necessary in Vietnam. So he's going to do whatever he feels is necessary, and he's not always going to even get permission or communicate with Congress, and neither will Nixon. All right, 1968, the Tet Offensive. What was it, and why is it important?
It was a North Vietnamese attack upon South Vietnam. Basically what it did is that it kind of woke Americans up that, no, we are not close to winning this war, and in fact that we are extremely far from it.
Very good. Yes, it's North Vietnam launched all these attacks on South Vietnam. We were able to resist and push back all those attacks, but it looked like a loss for us because for the American people who kept being told we're about to win, we're about to win, we're about to win, when suddenly we see we're not about to win, look what's going on, it's what shifts popular opinion to be more opposed to the war than for it. In 1970, Nixon, at the same time he was bringing troops home, he expanded the war into Cambodia and Laos. And why did he expand the war into Cambodia and Laos? Very good. To cut off the supplies the North Vietnamese were funneling into South Vietnam. And that he does without asking Congress, so later on everybody finds out that these secret bombings are going on and it reignites protests. And also leads eventually to the Gulf of Tonkin being repealed. 1973 is the end of our involvement with the Paris Peace Accords. That was just between us and North Vietnam. We agreed to leave. They agreed to give us back our POWs. And then it shouldn't say 1974, it should say 1975. That's when South Vietnam fell to North Vietnam, when Ford was in office. But again, our involvement had ended. Okay, and in fact there had been a ceasefire between North and South Vietnam later in 1973, but North Vietnam broke that, the war waged on, and now we have one Vietnam, communists. Okay, Vietnam at home. Again, a lot of the things that are going to get the young people protesting, the big thing is the draft. Okay, because it was drafting people between 18 and 26 years of age. Who could get out of going, though, at least for the first couple years?
College students.
Very good. College students could get a deferment and postpone their service. Otherwise, the only other way to really get out of the draft was to get conscientious objector status. A conscientious objector is somebody who opposes the war for religious purposes or moral reasons. But there's tons of paperwork you have to fill out for that. And just because you got that status, the Supreme Court has ruled, doesn't mean you can't still have to serve in the military in a non-combatant role. Okay. Living room war. This also factored into public opinion because it's the first time America's seeing the war every night on TV. So it affected the support for the war. And the 1968 Democratic Convention was really the height of the student protests after the Tet Offensive. And that was in Chicago, where the police and the military and the students were really fighting each other. And then Kent State was a riot and protest that occurred after students found out about the secret bombing in Cambodia on May 4th, 1970. And the National Guard was called in by the governor of Ohio, and 4 students were killed. Did anybody watch that special last night on it? I forgot to even DVR it because I was dealing with the sick kids, but I think they'll probably replay it. So nobody watched it? No. Okay, I really wanted to watch it, so I totally forgot. All right, why couldn't we win this war in Vietnam? Huh?
You couldn't tell friend from foe.
Yes, very difficult to tell friend from enemy. There were not necessarily uniforms. And again, that created some tense situations between us and the South Vietnamese people. And it led to atrocities like My Lai. Uh-huh.
The South Vietnamese were apathetic towards our help.
Very good. Yes, South Vietnamese at times were indifferent to our efforts. And also, the government in Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, they were not being completely honest with us about what was the situation on the ground in Vietnam and so forth, which made it hard for us to develop policy.
North Vietnam was using guerrilla warfare in small units.
Very good. Yes, the North Vietnamese, first of all, they knew the terrain. They were using guerrilla warfare, which made our bombing, our carpet bombing that we're doing, not as effective as it could have been. What else made our carpet bombing ineffective?
Tunnel systems.
Their tunnel systems. So guerrilla warfare, tunnel systems, couldn't tell friend from enemy, the indifference of the South Vietnamese, dishonest South Vietnamese government, they're fighting on their own terrain, and also our use of things like Agent Orange and napalm also created a tense relationship between us and the South Vietnamese. Okay, Nixon. Nixon is going to try to contain communism with détente. What is détente?
Like relaxed tensions.
Yes, relaxation of Cold War tensions. And examples of it would be SALT I, the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty that said we are going to freeze production of certain weapons, and building a relationship with China. Okay. Again, Nixon will be the first to visit China, and he lifted travel restrictions. So he opened up a diplomatic relationship with China. And why did we do this?
Make the Soviet Union uncomfortable.
Yeah, push the Soviet Union to be a little bit uncomfortable and give in to some of our demands. Okay. Now, as far as his Vietnam policy, he won the election in 1968, promising peace with dignity. So he's going to wrap up the war but save face at the same time. So as soon as he won, he began the process of Vietnamization. And what is Vietnamization?
Pulling out our troops and basically handing over military power to the South Vietnamese.
Very good. Yes, pulling out our troops and turning the war over to the South Vietnamese to fight. But at the same time Vietnamization was occurring, so he's bringing troops home. He was expanding the war into Laos and Cambodia, keep in mind. And he was bombing Vietnam to pieces in an effort to push them into the peace settlement. So he expanded the war at the same time he was bringing people home. But it does end under Nixon. All right, Ford, just so you want to throw him in there, that's when you had the fall of South Vietnam to North Vietnam. And it's also when the War Powers Act was passed that started to put limits on the president's ability to use the military without a declaration of war. All right, so Carter. Again, human rights, that was the thing he was really passionate about, but this caused tension between us and the Soviet Union and us and China. So this was really the end of détente. We had that period of détente under Nixon and Ford. It ends under Carter. The other thing that ended détente was the invasion of Afghanistan, which is the reason we boycotted the 1980 Winter Olympics in Moscow. All right, now the stuff we have not gotten to in class, but are covering tomorrow. Under Reagan, Reagan is going to develop a plan called SDI, or the Strategic Defense Initiative. Strategic Defense Initiative. It's also referred to as Star Wars. Essentially, it was this really far-out plan to build a missile shield around the United States. It was going to be like a satellite system that would detect missiles and be able to destroy them before they reached the United States. It was a far out idea, but the fact that Gorbachev and the Soviet Union thought we were very serious about this really made him start to give up on the space race and really made him start to give up on a lot of things. So the plan itself kind of helped us win the Cold War, even though it's never carried out. All right, he will also attempt to contain communism in Central America. He will support some very corrupt non-communist leaders. Corrupt non-communist leaders in both Nicaragua and El Salvador. Nicaragua and El Salvador. So again, just like Eisenhower and many of the other presidents were supporting some ruthless dictators because they were non-communist in Latin America. El Salvador and Nicaragua. All right, the end of the Cold War is really attributed to Ronald Reagan, because when he had the opportunity to reach out to Gorbachev and as things were weakening in the Soviet Union, he did so. So in the 1980s, Gorbachev will be the leader of the Soviet Union, and he starts to move the Soviet Union away from communism a little bit, and these are terms you probably talked about in world studies, with glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost means political openness, and perestroika, which I would argue is probably not so hot anymore in Russia. And then perestroika is the transition to a free market economy as opposed to a government-run economy. We're going to see more arms agreements to really halt the armament race. In 1988, you have the INF agreement. And this is the first one that said we would start to destroy what we had already created. So SALT started to say we're not going to make more, we're going to freeze. This is said we would start to destroy some things that we already had. And then the rest of the stuff happens under Bush, but really the start of it happened under Reagan. So it's really Reagan's given the credit for ending the Cold War. Again, so 1989 and 1991 was under Bush. So we have the eastern countries of Europe begin to win democracy, and also the Berlin Wall fall in 1989. Examples of some countries would be Czechoslovakia and Poland, who break free from that Iron Curtain.
How do you spell Czechoslovakia?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I just have CZECH for short. We'll have to look it up. Okay, then 1991 is when the Soviet Union was dissolved. And so you had a lot of countries that had been part of the Soviet Republic that kind of gained independence. And Boris Yeltsin became the president of the Russian Republic. Okay, so and he transitions to a more non-communist free society. Now, I would argue Putin has started to move Soviet Union in the opposite direction of where Yeltsin took it. Okay. All right, and then 1993, you have START 2 under Bush, which again was starting to destroy weapons we'd already created.
What year was that?
That was 1993. That was right before he left office, because he'll only be a one-term president. Okay, also 1989, 1990, you have the Persian Gulf War. I guess it was more 1990. And does anybody know what started that first war against Iraq?
Iraq invaded Kuwait.
Yeah, Saddam Hussein and Iraq invaded Kuwait. And so we will go to liberate Kuwait, and that's because Kuwait was a very oil-rich nation, and we were dependent upon that oil. And it'll be a pretty brief affair. Of course, we don't actually get rid of Saddam Hussein at that time, which is why we go to war in Iraq a little bit later. September 11th, obviously you know what happened there. The planes hitting the World Trade Center, and that was orchestrated by Osama bin Laden. September 11th led directly to the war on terror in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq. Again, the war on terror in Afghanistan was to get rid of the Taliban, okay, who was a key terrorist organization. Okay. The war in Iraq, we were told, was because they had weapons of mass destruction and they were harboring Al-Qaeda. But we never found those weapons of mass destruction, and the number of Al-Qaeda has actually increased since before the war. So the war in Iraq then really became about a war for democracy, a war to liberate this country from a horrible dictator. That's kind of how it was reinvented. Okay.